Good evening. I hope you're well, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. Um, we were due to be joined by Colette Osborne, I think many of you probably know, but unfortunately she's uh, unable to make it due to some family issues, which means you're stuck with me. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Gareth Penn, and I'm the registrar of the Hairdressing Council. Um, and this evening we're going to be having a look at some of the changes to employment rules and regulations, and also some of the issues surrounding self-employment and self-employed status. Um, so a couple of little housekeeping bits. If you've got any questions that you want to raise with me, please pop them in the chat. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that as well. So apologies if I'm looking down at my phone whilst I'm talking. The session's also being recorded. So as ever, if you're not good with this, I'm afraid you're going to have to opt out. So what we'll do, I'll share my screen and go through a few of the slides because it's got some of the points that I think we need to talk about on there. Right up at the end, if you let me have your email address in the chat either now or through the session, I will then send the slides to you with all the info on. So right, give me 2 seconds while I press share, and hopefully the technology will work. Right, so if I now press, you would hope that, right, here we go. So with any luck, you can now see my screen. It would be nice if somebody could confirm that they can see the Hair Council, our new Hair Council logo, and that's working. That's working okay. I think Nikki's just typing something. I'm going to work on the basis that you can see my screen. Oh, hang on. I think I need to swap it to the other one. Hang on. We're nearly there. Hang on. I share that one, and then there we go. Now you can see my screen. You'd think it's the first time I've ever used a video sharing platform. Okay, so thanks, Emma. I had no idea I'd gone mute. Technology, what a wonderful thing it is. Let me try again to share my slides, and we can hopefully you can hear me at the same time. So 2 secs, let's try again. So with luck, you can hear me now. Great, thank you for the thumbs up. That's brilliant. So apologies. So these are the areas we're going to look at. I'm going to try and finish by 8 o'clock. As I say, ask me questions as we go through. So I think the first thing is to say that there's a huge amount of change been going on in employment matters, both for the employed and self-employed, since the current Labour government came in. I think first thing to Ah, hopefully I'm off mute. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Apologies. So, um, minimum wage rates changed from the first of April, and you can see here the new rates. So, for example, if you're over 21, it's 12.21, up from 11.44, and there's been a lot of chat and a lot of noise around the apprentice rates, which are now up at £7.55 an hour, and how that is going to absolutely reduce the number of apprentices that a salon, an employed salon, can take on. Um, we agree with that. It's a really difficult balance because, of course, we all want to pay people as much as possible and for them to have a decent wage. But equally, it's got to be affordable for the business. We're working hard with government, both the Department for Business and Trade and also the Department for Education, to look at ways in which apprentices and the whole apprenticeship journey is something that can continue, because I think currently there is some real risk that it can't. What I would add here is that the low pay commission, who are the guys that it's a quango that advise government on the rates that minimum wage should be set, have stated that they want to bring the lower rates up to the same level as the national living wage. And again, this really we are working hard on, because we are concerned that it does make people unaffordable in our sector. Okay, so you may have heard something about an employment rights bill, which was well trailed by the Labour Party before they came to power, and this is being seen by them as a reset of the rights of an employee. Now, we covered some of this back in the end of last summer when it was first announced, and a lot more detail has now come out. So I'm going to just look at some of the main areas that affect our sector. So this is not everything within the employment rights bill at all, but it's the areas that I feel impact our sector the greatest. So first off, guaranteed hours for 0-hour workers. So a 0-hour worker is somebody who has a contract of employment, but it doesn't have a set number of working hours per week, per month. It's used heavily in hospitality and in retail, but I know there are some salons that do use 0-hour contracts. Effectively, in my mind, this removes 0 hours contracts from the field, because they've got guaranteed hours, so they're not 0-hour contracts anymore. We don't know the detail of this yet. It's currently going through the House of Commons. We expect this to come into force in autumn 2026, all of the issues here. So there's still plenty of time for us all to lobby government about this. If you've got a particular view on any of the areas I raise, please let me know and we can add that to the work that we do. Second off, and I think this is a really important issue, which is protection from unfair dismissal. So currently, as it stands, an employee can only claim unfair dismissal if they've worked for you for 2 years. So up to the 2-year point, as it currently stands, you're able to dismiss somebody and they can't claim that you did it for unfair reasons. And this has been very, very useful for employers, because it means that it is easier and quicker to get rid of employees who've not been quite the right fit in the first 2 years. However, that's going to change, and workers will be protected from unfair dismissal from day one in their job. And I think, again, it's one of these slightly more complicated issues because there are employers, perhaps not in our sector, who have been taking advantage of this and getting rid of many employees just before the 2-year point, so they don't fall into longer dismissal processes. I think, unfortunately, it might lead to lots of people losing their job just before this bill becomes law, and that would be a great shame. But definitely one to be mindful of, to make sure that you are following the rules correctly for all employees, irrespective of their length of service from when this comes in. We would always advise you taking legal advice if you're not sure about the process to follow. Another big one is improved statutory sick pay. Now, this is linked with the increase in employers' allowance, which was announced in the October budget, where an employer gets £10,000 now per year to cover the statutory statutory payments other than maternity. So that's gone up from 5,000 to 10,000, and of course sick pay was included within that money. However, sick pay was only payable currently when somebody has earned more than £123 a week and has been sick for 4 days, and that is going to change so that sick pay will be payable from day one of sickness, and there's no lower earnings limit, so it would be for all employees. I've got to be honest, I have great misgivings about this, because I think it removes the disincentive to be sick if you're going to get statutory sick pay from day one of sickness. I do think this will lead to an increase in the number of sick days. And the question is, how do you mitigate that? How do you work with your team to try and stop that happening? And the answer is that you need a really, really robust process of meeting and discussing with everybody who goes and has a sick day every single time they do it. So you're not making an easy process. You're not putting them under undue pressure, but you are asking them, what is it we can do to help make it so that you're not sick? Is there anything at work we can help with? So that it is not an easy option just to take a paid statutory sick pay day. Yeah, I agree, Kelly. It's a huge concern, and of course, statutory sick pay is the minimum you have to pay. If your contracts say you'll pay more, then you have to obviously stick to the contract. I believe there'll be a great deal of lobbying about the statutory sick pay changes. So I think we're going to have to keep an eye on this one to see what happens. Linked, again, the next would be prevention of sexual harassment. So sexual harassment in the workplace is, firstly, not okay and is illegal currently. However, this is including the phrase reasonable steps to prevent, and it brings it in line with the Equality Act. But the reason I highlight this is because, as employers, we should be doing this anyway. We should be taking reasonable steps to prevent all sorts of harassment of employees and workers, irrespective of what that harassment is, whether it's about quality, whether it's about sexual harassment. If you're not sure and your contracts don't include the correct clauses that talk about what you will do, the process that you will follow, I would strongly advise that you update your contracts to to include these things. A couple here of extra ones, which again are all added costs for employers. So this is bringing paternity leave. It means that employees will not need to have worked for their employer for 26 weeks. So this then means that to take paternity leave, somebody needs to give 15 weeks notice before the expected week of childbirth, and it brings it in alignment with maternity leave and adoption leave. I'm not sure this is contentious. I think it's actually probably a really good thing. It's equality, and I think that's probably one that will definitely go through, as will bereavement leave. Not all employers have been as good as they should, perhaps, because not all employers have been given time off regarding grieving for the loss of a loved one. I think the question mark around bereavement leave will be about how close a family member needs to be before bereavement leave is an automatic right. I think we would all expect that to be immediate family, but some people will consider a cousin immediate family, others not. So we'll need to wait and see the detail of what is covered in the wording of that act. And if it is left open, then I think my advice would be to include some wording in your contracts as to what you believe to be immediate family. But of course, different circumstances for each people, because we don't know, their personal circumstances, and they may live with a cousin, for example, so that then person is very close to them. One of the big issues, we receive loads of phone calls about flexible working. In particularly, this is an issue where workers maybe have had maternity leave and they want to return to work, but on different hours. And I think on the whole, flexible working is a really good thing, because it means that you don't necessarily lose an employee who only wants to work reduced hours or different days because of their change in circumstances. I think the key here is that as an employer, we don't have to accept the flexible working request. And where there is a little confusion is that lots of employees believe that this change means that we have to accept their flexible working request. We can only turn it down as an employer for one of the 8 reasons listed here. And in our industry, the business will not be able to meet customer demand, and there is a lack of work to do during the proposed working times, are often the reasons that are used. We see a lot of people not wanting to work late nights, Saturdays. We do have to be reasonable, so we can't just say no. And so keep this in mind when you get some flexible working requests come in. You do, with the new rules coming in, you will need to consult with the employee. We don't know what the process of that will be. Likely to be something along the lines of a couple of meetings, similar to the other employment meetings like redundancy, grievance, disciplinary, where they get the opportunity to bring a union representative or a colleague with them, but the detail will come out in the near future. One I know that lots of you have concerns around, and there's been a lot of chat online around tips, because of course from the 1st of October all tips have to be passed on to workers in full. And it's really sad that not everybody has been doing that, and I think that this is a really good good thing. There are lots of ways in which this can be done, whether the worker has their own sum up type card machine, because of course cash is not necessarily the best option because lots of customers don't have it anymore. Whether you use it as part of your PDQ system and you're then identifying it as a tip. Some of the systems like Forest and others can have the tips and tip management as part of the service, but make sure it's clear in your processes with your employees, but also with your accounts. How much were the tips, and that there's evidence they have been passed over. Lots of salon owners and employers here are saying, I will have nothing to do with tips whatsoever, and the stylists have their own PDQ machine, SumUp or Stripe or whatever it might be, so that they control all the tips themselves. And it's a very simple solution to do it just like that. Okay, that's kind of the most important areas, I think, of the Employment Rights Bill, and we will continue to cover this right up to the point where it becomes law, when we have the absolute detail of it. At the moment, I wouldn't advise there's a lot you need to do other than be prepared, because we don't know the detail of what's coming out. For example, the statutory sick pay, this is what they proposed. Is that what we're going to end up with? We shall see. We shall see. So one of the areas that I also want to cover this evening is about the focus on enforcement. And the reason I want to look at the focus on enforcement is because the Chancellor, at both the budget and the spring statement, made it very clear that one of the areas in which they're going to try and generate more revenue is to focus on tax avoidance and non-compliance. And we are really concerned that there's going to be a great deal of enforcement, not just against our sector, but against all sectors. So where there is a large percentage of self-employment, and the figures are showing that in hairdressing in particular, but hair and beauty, that 70% plus of all workers are self-employed, and so that really indicates that we may well be a target for HMRC. Got no inside information, but it would be an obvious step for them to take, and so I'm really keen to try and advise and to help, and that if people are not sure about what their status is, or those are the people that work with them, that they get, you get your house in order, and the self-employed workers get their house in order as soon as possible. So I think this is, obviously important. Self-employment is legitimate, and absolutely we 100% support self-employment. When you're self-employed, you have to deal with your tax yourself, and you have to deal with the relationship with your engager. So the engager in our industry is often the salon owner, and you've got to have a genuine relationship, and we're just going to cover off some of the main areas that HMRC have stated that they are going to look at. We're really concerned that there are people taking money off hairdressers and providing poor, misleading advice that they can dodge VAT, that they can legitimately flip from being employed to self-employed over one day, simply with a contract. And we are really concerned that this is opening up both the worker and the engager to tax penalties and to fines. Just because lots of people are doing a certain thing does not mean that it is okay. It's unlikely there's going to be blanket moratorium where HMRC say, okay, you've got 6 months to get everything sorted, and after that, then we'll come after you, because their view is simply that the law is the law, and whether that's tax law or employment law is you need to follow it. So this is something I think we do need to take very seriously as an industry. Hey, here's my disclaimer. We all use them all the time, don't we? But we're not providing an opinion on whether certain situations would or would not qualify as employment or self-employment, and this is not legal advice. So these points I've taken and I'll talk through now have come from the guidance given by HMRC to the enforcement officers as to the areas that they should look at when they are deciding whether somebody is employed or self-employed. And I have used their wording so that it's really clear, I think, what they mean. I've not included all of the areas that they look at because it's a really long document. Lots of it pretty dull and technical. But I've tried to select the areas which I feel are most relevant to our industry and to the issues that we believe exist. So first off, the nature of the job. So, the HMRC say if somebody was previously an employee of the business and became self-employed without any change in the terms and conditions of the engagement, they're unlikely to be self-employed. So that would mean, for example, if on the end of March, all of the people in your salon were employed, and then you agreed with them and they asked to go self-employed because they felt others were doing it, they wanted more flexibility, whatever the reason, but that come the 1st of April, everybody became self-employed, but effectively everything else stayed the same, that is unlikely to mean that they are truly self-employed. HMRC want to look at the contract. So a contract can be written, oral, implied, or a combination. However, a written contract is really, really important. And the reason it is so important is because the written contract will state the terms of the relationship between the engager, so the salon owner, and the worker. And one of the things HMRC say they'll look at is whether these terms are genuine. So, is what it says in the contract what is done? Are there differences? How large are they? So it's these sorts of things that they will look at. However, just because it's in a contract doesn't mean that person then is okay in their status, because it still needs to meet all of the other criteria that they give. So this is a pretty horrible phrase, in business on their own account. So this is really about the distinction between an individual who works under the control of and as part of a business, and those who go alone and sets up, in their phrase, on his own account. I don't know why we're still using male terminology at HMRC for everybody, but there we go. That's that's not us. And it's about bearing responsibility for the success or failure of the enterprise. And so, this looks at the control issue. So, who is telling that worker when they come and go, what they do? If an engager has right of control, then that's employment. If the engager has no right of control, and this is the key phrase here, whatsoever, then it's more likely that they are self-employed. And the more control that exists, the more likely that the relationship between the engager and the worker is that of employment. And so this might be things like when you come and go, as in when the worker arrives, when they leave, what they charge, which clients that they do, which products that they use, all those sorts of things, right the way through to, in some instances, people who are claiming to be self-employed being given things like a holiday allowance, or those sorts of things. So control is really, really important in determining whether somebody is employed or self-employed. This right to substitute, this is a really difficult issue in our sector, and it's difficult to know how much weight to put on the right to substitute, because HMRC's guidance says that if the worker undertakes to perform a task, so that is, I'm working in your salon and I'm undertaking a task to be a stylist, but I'm free to hire someone else to do it, it's unlikely I'm an employee. So it's likely that I'm going to be self-employed because I can choose to get someone else to do that work for me. And the issue that I have here with the right to substitute is that I've never met a salon where there are self-employed workers in that the owner would be happy for that self-employed worker to substitute somebody else in on a day they wanted to take off to do their clients. So, for example, I'm working at John's salon. I decide to take Friday off. I ask Kelly to come in and do my clients. That is the right to substitute. I pay Kelly to do those clients. And to be truly self-employed, HMRC say that there must be a right to substitute. And this last line here, if the engager has an unlimited right to veto substitutions, then this may mean that in reality, the worker has to provide the services and the right of substitution is not genuine. And so, this is something that in a contract would need to be written in. Again, you need, we say with all the contracts, I would strongly advise taking advice about getting a contract if this is a route you're going down. So equipment. If the engager, salon owner, provides any necessary equipment, this will point towards existence of a contract of employment. And the example that HMRC often use here is within construction, where it's becoming more and more normal now for workers to provide their own equipment. Most hairdressers would provide most of their equipment. I think if the salon's providing something, it needs to be written in the contract. One of the other areas to look at here is financial risk. So financial risk means that self-employed worker has some risk in doing the job that they're doing. So that they don't have a base salary. And it says who risk their own money would likely to be self-employed. I think what one has to consider here and be really careful with is that this would almost always be the case, I think, that there's financial risk to somebody who either pays rent to a salon or is on a commission split. However, just because you meet one of the determining factors doesn't mean that you automatically qualify in your employment, in your worker status. And it isn't that HMRC put more weight to one area or another. It's not like an adding total to say, oh, well, there's 3 points for financial risk, 1 for equipment, 4 for a contract. Therefore, the total means they're self-employed. The way HMRC look at it is across the whole to take a view on whether that person, that worker status is correct. So, you do need to be very mindful. So basis of payment, I've included this here because there's a wide variety of ways in which self-employed folk are paid, whether that is directly to them or they then pay kind of ground rent for the chair, whether there's a commission split. Really, there's a huge different range of those. As it says here, can be a feature of both employment and self-employment. So it doesn't look like HMRC placed too much weight on that area itself. This is one of the areas that I think is most important, which is that if there's only one engager, so a worker only works at John's salon, and they've done so for a long time, it's likely, using HMRC's guidance, that person then becomes employed. And so that then becomes quite difficult because, self-employed hairdressers often do lots of clients outside of the salon, but HMRC need to know that that income is being generated outside of the salon. And so that's why all self-employed workers need to be submitting a tax return that proves where all of the different income sources are coming from, because it's very easy to think that, oh, I work at John's salon and or work from that location and I do some clients on the side, but the only income that the HMRC can see is that from the salon. There are loads and loads of self-employed people who do this correctly and who submit all the tax returns correctly and work absolutely within the boundaries of the law. So Kelly's asked if this is similar to IR35. A little bit, Kelly. IR35 isn't really designed to catch workers in our industry. This is really more about, does somebody just work for one engager as one of the areas that HMRC look at. IR35 is a totally separate piece of legislation that's really, really complicated. And so, really does, this is about, as I say, whether you only work for one person and for how long that you've worked for them. So that sort of covers off most of the areas I think are really worth focusing on. And as I say, the key here is that this is not just I meet one, therefore I'm okay. This is HMRC look at this across the whole and then make a decision as to whether they think that this is legitimate or not. If you are not sure, if you might run blended model or you might rent space in your business, and you're not sure as to whether you and your setup complies, I really strongly advise you take some advice on it, both from an accountant and also from a lawyer in terms of the written contract, because if HMRC do come and they start enforcing our sector, we want to make sure that everybody is doing it correctly, and that there's no reason for there to be a problem. So as I mentioned, take proper legal advice, add your email address, and I'll send you the slides. And if you've got any questions, now is the time to pop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. What I'd also add is that our next webinar is on Tuesday, the 22nd of April, at 7 p.m. and that's looking at allergy awareness. Allergy Awareness Week starts on Tuesday, the 22nd of April, after the bank holiday. We're holding a webinar that evening at 7 p.m. to look at allergy, to look at the harmonised approach. We've got an awesome offer about some allergy awareness training that's totally free and is available for all to take part in. So keep an eye out on social and on email, and we will let you have that those details to register as soon as possible. So yeah, let me just quickly check the chat and the Q&A. Now I'm not sharing a screen, so it doesn't look like there are any other questions. So thank you very much for your time. We have really rattled through pretty quickly there. So if you do have any questions that you want to raise that this has picked up, please just get in touch, and we can either point you in the direction of advisors who can help, and we can obviously also point in the direction of the HMRC documents, because they're available on the web, if you knew where to look. And I've got to thank Colette for that. She's really good at digging those sorts of things out, and we will share that information with you. Finally, I'll pop this up on the website tomorrow, so anybody who wants to watch it who couldn't make it tonight is able to do so. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I will leave you to your evening. Thanks a lot.